Let's take a look at what's making news in print and online this morning. We are joined by Simon Breheny, Director of Policy at the Institute of Public Affairs. Simon, good morning.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
Yeah, look, it is a good day because there's lots to talk about. Where would you like to start?
There is. I wanted to talk first of all about Australia Day. So how many councils now are we up to? 3 councils in Melbourne.
Oh, there's a third.
Banyule now wants to get involved.
Now that's talking about getting rid of
So 2 have
Australia
voted,
Day
Banyule wants to go there too. Okay.
Ceremonies, yes, exactly. So they're consulting currently with constituents in Banyule to work out whether or not this is the right way to go. Frankly, I think it's pretty ridiculous. I think that we are focusing on the wrong things. I think Australia Day has never been about Australian history. It's been about celebrating what the country is and where we're going.
It has so been about Australian history.
No, I don't think it is.
That's why the date's where it is, because it's the arrival of the First Fleet.
No, but I mean, the reason...
You can't deny that, it is.
Yeah, sure. But what we're celebrating is Australia as a country, the institutions that make Australia great, and frankly, those are British institutions. I mean, the idea that we couldn't have the Australia that exists today without those institutions, I think, is a furphy. And I think it's a mistake that these councils that should be standing up for things like the rule of law and protection for property rights and a legal system that works in the way that it does are trashing what Australia Day is really about.
What about the idea we have 2 days, one keeping Australia Day but another one recognising our Indigenous heritage and the fact that Indigenous Australians were here first?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that is talked about is that people don't understand the history of Australia and the very difficult history of white settlement in Australia and the way that whites have interacted with our Indigenous population, and I just don't think that that's right. I think most Australians are very well aware of that. It's something that they think about, that they talk about with one another. You know, whether we have to have an official day, sure.
But these are Australians who want to talk about it and have a problem with it.
Yeah,
I mean,
but what I'm saying is those,
as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm saying those conversations already happen. I think they go on all the time, and I think I wouldn't be surprised actually if there are people that talk about it on Australia Day, and if they want to do that, then terrific.
Now we showed briefly that story from the Australian that had the headline "Ideologues Capture Curriculum." What's this one about? Yeah,
so one of the really significant concerns is that these sorts of ideas that we see in the course of the debate around Australia Day are being pushed into our schools. So history lessons talking about the fact that as white Australians you should feel guilty for our history, that Australia Day shouldn't be called Australia Day, it should be called Invasion Day. These sorts of ideas I think are pushing into the curriculum, and I think it's terrific that there are people like the IPA's resident historian Dr. Bella de Brera, who's talking about the fact that schools should actually be talking about critical thinking. Those are the ideas that schools should be grappling with, and when it comes to a curriculum, having a balanced version of historical events is not too bad an idea.
Isn't questioning history critical thinking?
Yeah, sure. I think it's about a balance, and I think that we should be questioning history. I think that what these guys are saying is that the scales have been tipped much too far in one direction.
Let's have a look at Matthias Cormann's speech. I think he gave last night. He's had in news that will surprise absolutely nobody. He's had a tilt at the leader of the opposition, Bill Shorten.
Yes.
Blow me down.
So this is terrific. The reason why it's terrific is because they are finally sharpening their focus on what they want to hit Labor over. Finance Minister Matthias Cormann has accused Labor of trashing the Hawke-Keating economic legacy by embracing socialism, which he says will crush aspiration and drive successful people out of the country. That's a pretty clear.
They've got themselves a line now.
That's a pretty clear line, and I think it's a good one given the sort of policies that Bill Shorten's been talking about over the last couple of weeks, taxing family trusts. There's been this fight, of course, over the corporate tax rate. I think that this is going to be this idea of aspiration, of success, of opportunity is going to be one of the really clear narratives for the government in the lead up to the next federal election.
Okay, let's go to the citizenship saga about to play out in the form of a directions hearing, at least in the High Court today. Coverage of that this morning?
Yeah, Susan Kiefel will be hearing that today. This is the first in, who knows, really, frankly, how long this will take. Hopefully,
this actually could take a little more time than we thought.
Yes, it could. Hopefully it doesn't take too long, but it could run for quite a while. So we'll see. But I think it's really important that the High Court clarifies what Section 44 actually means.
And interesting political tactics that we're seeing play out, care of this Financial Review story.
Yeah, exactly. So the Coalition basically have decided that they don't want to talk about this anymore. fair enough. MPs who are being called into question in terms of their eligibility. So
yes, it's mutually assured destruction.
yeah, well, I mean, that's what the concern is for both of the major parties. If the coalition demands that Bill Shorten release documents, then Bill Shorten demand that Liberal Party MPs release documents. This never ends.
And anything resembling a government agenda gets swallowed up again for weeks and months. And The Australian has a story about Malcolm Turnbull being increasingly confident the High Court will rule in the government's favour. Yeah,
so he believes that there's not a significant risk that he will lose those three. It's very likely, on my view, that both of the Greens would have gone anyway. They've done that themselves, and I think the court will make that clear that that's what would have happened anyway. The others, there are a few that are somewhere in the middle, but I think that the Nationals will be okay. And Xenophon, I think, will probably be okay too.
You haven't itemised this, but worth mentioning that piece by Anne Toomey, the very highly regarded constitutional lawyer who sort of got her balance of probabilities in The Australian today. Yeah,
exactly. So there's a great table in The Australian where Anne Toomey said, well, less likely, more likely.
You can play citizenship bingo on it.
Well, at the end of the day, it's a bit of a guess for any of us, even for Anne, who, as you say, is a very well-respected constitutional scholar. So
what's funny in this story is that she too, in this process, has discovered she's in New Zealand.
Yes, which I thought was hilarious. In looking into this, she realised.
Can we make clear she hadn't planned to stand for Parliament?
But that's the whole thing on dissent. I mean, the ruling might be more sort of liberal towards the Barnaby Joyces and the Fiona Nashes of this world versus the Larissa Waters and the Scott Ludlams. Yeah,
which I think is actually a workaround. I don't think that on a black letter reading that is right, but that may be the way that the court goes.